With an ever-increasing demand for potassium due to increasing crop yields, there is a need for a better source of potassium with improved availability and uptake potential. Alpine K-Tech is the most plant-available form of potassium and is able to enter the plant quickly and easily. As a foliar application, K-Tech is tank mixable with many crop protection products, thereby increasing the grower's resource use efficiency. K-Tech offers balanced fertility and an added energy source for the plant. The latest development of premium crop nutrition is doing a lot more with a lot less for your crops. Learn more at www.alpinepfl.com.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to part 3 of our episode, Farming is Risky Business. If you guys didn't catch episode part 1 or part 2, I'd suggest that you guys do that because this won't make a lot of sense without those pieces. We spoke about where we're at as a farming industry, economy, prices, yield in part 1, and then part 2, Peter did a fantastic job of walking our audience through all the different risk management tools, and there's a good handful of them. That is the bulk of the episode, so I suggest you guys really tune into that one. And now we're going to roll in and talk about what's right for my farm and figuring that out. So I know we chat a little bit about farmers participating and awareness levels, and you mentioned that changes by program and province, and it's all individual. I guess I want to set the stage with the question, why wouldn't farmers participate in these programs? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that there would be, I think really two main reasons. One would be that they would be from a cost perspective, is that they look at strictly based on a cost perspective. Number two, I don't know if I said two, but I'll actually go with three. Number two is that they don't have a good understanding of what they are and how they work and don't work for their individual farm operation. And then number four is that they don't think that, number three would be that they don't think that there's a benefit.
Okay.
Or that they don't think that they would ever trigger a claim from the program.
That makes sense. That's pretty straightforward.
And I think that that's pretty broad ranged across all of the products, whether it's crop insurance or agri-stability or some of the other private insurance things that we talked about.
Okay.
Hail insurance would be a good hail insurance is probably a good example of that. Is just depending on your area that you're in, there's lots of farmers that are in hail insurance. There's lots of farmers that aren't in hail insurance, and again, it just depends on their comfort level, their history. Did we ever get a claim? Have we ever got claimed? Do we get hail? Those kinds of things. So.
Okay. Well, and I always say the reason that I do this show is to bring farmers the people and ideas that'll impact their farming operation. And I am a farmer, my husband. Farmers are busy. I know farmers.
Right.
They are busy morning to night producing. So to keep on top and learn about every single part of the business that they can improve, and then dive into risk management and learn all of those things, that's a lot.
For sure it is. And I think it also is hard, again, because we're seeing more and more options, and we're seeing changes to our historical programs, the ones that we've, are near and dear to our heart, that we think that we understand, and then we see changes to those programs, so now we've got to figure out what the changes are.
Which is always fun.
Which is
just when you learn, it changes.
Exactly, right? And so that's a huge challenge. And then if we layer on top of that we've got these new products that are coming into the market, that sound like they might work, or maybe our neighbors using them may work. But again, how does that equate back to our own individual farm operation? I think is an important component that we need to remember.
Okay, so I want to ask the question, in an ideal perfect world we say risk is the opportunity, and I get that, and I'm not risk adverse. I just love the idea of implementing all these tools to make sure that you have a strong, well-rounded plan.
Right.
So I want to ask the question, would a farmer ever 100% insure, and would you even want to do that? Could you even afford that? Does it even make sense?
So I would say that there's a limited number of producers that would be able to go out and find insurance to be able to 100% insure.
Okay.
And I would say that in Manitoba, there are some situations where the margin would allow to do that, but I would say that would be the exception, not the rule.
Okay.
And I guess I also would argue that it's maybe not what the right target is.
Okay.
Right? So in the same way that we shouldn't be managing our risk management tools based on what their cost is, we also shouldn't be managing them based on the fact that we're trying to completely eliminate the risk. Now, today's maybe a bad day to use a stock market example because the stock market didn't have a great day today. But why do people invest in the stock market?
Stability, well, they hope. Profit, revenue.
Yeah, profit, right?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we just take our money and leave it in our savings account at the bank? Right? It's stable. There's no risk.
But there's no reward. Yes.
Right? And so the same, is the reason that people look at investing money in the stock market versus
Okay. Good analogy.
is the same thing,
Yeah.
right? Is we are playing a long game, right? Because we understand that there's going to be way more highs and lows, but we're expecting that we're going to get bigger returns. So the same, why wouldn't you just rent out all your land and get your 2% return on your land rent because then there's no risk, and then you can get the land appreciation. Well, we need something to do, but it's more than that, right?
So farmers are the ultimate gamblers, is
Yes.
what we're saying.
Yeah,
we like it.
I think exactly.
We don't, but we do.
Yeah.
You have to.
I always joke that
Stay.
farmers go to Vegas is because the odds are better.
That's a good one. Yeah.
But yeah, so we're obviously doing it for a reason, right? That we believe that we can generate a bigger return from our efforts and our operations. So we understand inherently that there is more risk. So it's just in terms of finding that balance to say, what am I willing to give up, which is the premiums, for the coverage, and what am I comfortable taking, and how much risk I'm taking.
Okay, I like it. So we're going to work to wrap the interview up. And I know you guys or Myers Norris Penny have what's called the risk profile.
Yeah, it's called the
Is that
Ag
right?
Risk Management Projector,
Oh, okay. So,
ARMP.
well, look at that. Fancy
we
dancy.
need an acronym. And it really is just it's a tool that allows us to input the coverage and premium information from all these different products that are out there.
Oh, really?
And then be able to compare them, basically get the farmer's individual information, be able to run kind of live scenarios in terms of what would happen if prices went up, if costs went up, if your acres changed, all those things that can be built in there, and to say how would these programs work, how would they not work, how would they work together.
That is fancy dancing.
Yeah, and so I think to me, the important thing is understanding is what the gap is. And so the gap is really between what your coverage is and what your costs are.
Okay.
And that's the most important thing. Is if you can understand that, then you can equate it back to something beyond your risk management tools, is to say, okay, how does this impact my financial structure? So we talked before about farmers that would have lots of debt or farmers that have no debt. Well, if you had 3 bad years in a row, so if you figured out what your gap is, what your worst case scenario is, you had 3 bad years in a row, what would that look like to your farm operation?
Okay.
And then from there, that can dictate how much risk you're wanting to take, right? So for instance, if, just run some quick math, if your worst case scenario is $100 an acre loss, you farm 3,000 acres, so that's $300,000. So if you had 3 worst years in a row, which could happen, it's happened.
Yeah.
We can think about whether it's the 80s or the early 90s, 80s that were wet, the early 90s that were, 80s that were dry, early 90s that were wet, certainly on our farm, is that can happen. So, okay, your 3,000 acre farm, 3 years, we've lost $900,000 of equity out of our business through losses. Can we weather that? Can we afford to ride it out so that we can get back to those 2018 years where we can go plus 200, right, instead of minus 100. And if we can't afford the minus 100, then, okay, now let's look back at some of these risk management tools, and can we get that to, if it costs us, $6 or $8 or $10 or $12, and we can get to a minus 50, then is that acceptable for us? Versus, or do we need to figure out to get to a minus 25, and we've got to spend $16 or $18 to get to that.
But that's what your farm can handle.
But that's what we can handle.
That is a really smart way to look at it. I like that.
Yeah, and again, it's just the tool looks really at the production piece, but it's part of the broader conversation about, okay, well, if we've got to bear this production risk, then what risk can we not tolerate, whether it's from a marketing side, from a financial side? Do we need to make sure that we get our business, the financial structure of our business, in the right place? Or can we afford to take on additional risk of more land or not, buy more land or not? So all those things that are really just driven out of what's that worst case scenario look like, and what are the implications of it when it happens, not if it happens, but when it happens to our farm.
Okay. So I'm a farmer. We're farmers, and I think farmers are the ultimate do-it-yourselfer, right? We're entrepreneurs. We have to do everything for the most part, the mentality. If we're smart, we bring in experts. I wanted to come into this meeting and get a black and white answer for every farm out there and be done
Yes.
at the end of this. I've come to learn that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and not that I want to do a sales pitch, but it almost sounds like it makes sense to have a professional come and talk to you about that, right? I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces there.
For sure, and I think that it's, obviously as a professional, I think it's important to seek advice when you need to seek advice. It's just, in a way, it's not a lot different than your agronomy on your farm, right? So you would either hire or consult with somebody and get a specialist opinion on the agronomy for your farm operation, and really for your risk management, your farm business is no different. So are the things that you can do that your agronomist does? Absolutely. But are also things and opinions that you're looking for kind of a broader understanding, of the knowledge that they have to bring to your farm operation. And so I think the challenge is that on the farm business and the consulting side is that it's often that we aren't tied to a specific product, right? So our cost is very upfront.
That's the hard part, eh?
Yeah, is to get over is that, I want to call Peter, but that means that we're going to get a bill. And so the way that we work as consultants is that we get paid for our time.
Yes.
And so if there's a time commitment and invested, then that's the way that we earn the revenue for our business. But I think that there are things that you can do, and I'm not certainly saying that you shouldn't try and figure this stuff out yourself.
Yeah.
But is certainly do that. Because the clients, honestly, that I have the best conversations with are the ones that understand it the best.
That makes sense. Then they're meeting you here, and then you're fine-tuning probably, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so I think that is really the important piece, is understanding, as I said, what is that worst case scenario? If we, what is our cost structure? And if we were to trigger a crop insurance claim, if we only got 80% of our expected crop, or if we had a crop failure and got a crop insurance payout, what revenue would we get from crop insurance, and what's the gap against what our costs are? And that would be a good place to start. If you've got
pretty easy.
Yeah, and if then you can start to layer in some of those other pieces, and then you've got an understanding when you start to evaluate some of these other tools that are out there, because whether it's Just Solutions or whether it's Global Ag Risk, is that we're right away talking about margins and margin-based insurance. So they're going to have a margin. Global Ag Risk, as an example, is a margin over your fixed costs. A margin over your inputs.
Okay.
So again, you need to understand what your input costs are. You need to understand how much margin you need to take and what your other costs are, right? So if your other costs are $200 and you cover $100 over your input costs, that means your exposure is $100.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So it brings it down in half, essentially.
Right. And is that enough? Is that significant?
Yeah.
And once you've understood that, then you can also look back through the years to say, okay, well, where were years that we did trigger a payment, whether it's crop insurance or agri-stability, right? The programs that we know, where was it that we did trigger a payment, and what was that? Like, those become our worst case scenarios, right? Okay. 2000. So I always ask clients, what was the worst year? What was your worst year? Well, there was a frost in 2004. There was flood, 2011 where we didn't get a crop in, or 2012 where we seeded and then it flooded, right? Like, there are different years, and then we can use that as our context to say, okay, this is what happened in that year, so then this is what would have happened if you had a different insurance suite than what you have now.
Oh, smart. That's a nice way to look at it and make it real. For sure. Right?
I'm upfront with clients. I think this is maybe one of the most important things for clients to be doing is, as you said, we're a consultant, so we're coming back to the cost component. we want to get paid for our time. But I've told clients is that if we do this work and you have see no value in it, I'm not going to send you a bill for it. Because I think it's that important.
Well, and if it's being done right, it's going to make sure that there's more income somewhere, right?
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah, and I think it's just, as you said before, is that farmers are busy, and we get that, and so can we use the specialty that we have to be able to focus them in, give them some good advice and opinions about one area of their farm operations, so they can go back to doing the things that they're good at and what's really making money for their operation.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when we first sat down with our accountant, there's that get to know time, that first year where they really they spend more time getting to know the operation, the cost, all that good stuff, putting a plan together. And then from what I found, it's kind of a little bit status quo from there. You get it in place and then call as you need to ask questions.
You bet.
Okay.
And certainly the farms that I work with on a regular basis, that I understand their business better, then we can have better conversations because we understand the business better.
That makes
right?
sense.
And then the same thing too for clients that come that understand the information better, is that we can have better conversations because they understand just a higher level of understanding between the two of us. So, and you're right, every farm is different, even though you guys all think that you're the same, is you're completely different, as it comes to risk and risk management, but also just in the profile, the way that you act and react. And so it's just getting to know what the drivers are and the triggers are for your own individual operation, that we can really focus in on and give you advice that's specific to you and not blanket approach.
I like that. And I was going to ask you for final words of wisdom. Can you even top all that?
I don't know. I think it's just, be open to options and opportunities that are out there, but also take some time and understand, again, what this worst case scenario, what does it look like for our farm, and can we afford to weather it? And then use that as your guide and for your contingency plan for your planning. We've still got about 6 weeks of planning season left here before guys start getting back out into the field. So make the most of that, and
it's coming quick.
Absolutely, look for those opportunities.
Excellent. Great words of wisdom. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us. Our audience appreciates the wisdom you bring. I do as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you guys so much for joining us, and make sure to check out the show notes. I'm planning to put together a great white page that talks about some of these different risk management tools, so that you can have something to take home, reference, and start to work towards on your farm. So thanks so much. If you like the episode, subscribe, share, comment. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.